I used to suffer from brutal, debilitating panic attacks. They started small, just locking me into my own head. If I was in public, the voices of people around me fading into an unintelligible noise while I scanned the area for the nearest restroom in case I needed to make a sudden escape. These would usually be combined with some mild nausea, which would fuel further anxiety, which would fuel further nausea. The spiral had begun. Over the years, I tried a few self-remedies to curb these attacks. The combination of Seinfeld episodes and games of Peggle were the most effective, but the only real solution was ultimately waiting them out. These distractions made waiting it out easier, but the issue remained. I was completely useless until the feeling had passed. I eventually visited my family doctor, who prescribed me Wellbutrin for a 2-week trial. At the end of 2 weeks, I felt no difference at all, so he gave me Paxil for another trial. I took my first dose before bed. 2 a.m. I went from a full, deep sleep to immediately awake and alert in a split second. My heart was racing. I leapt out of bed, into the bathroom, and paced feverishly. The worst panic attack I had ever experienced in my life. Several orders of magnitude worse. I called a telehealth nurse and begged her to stay on the line with me as I was convinced I was dying. She assured me that I did not need to go to the hospital and to be patient, that it should pass. About 2 hours later, it did. Enough for me to get some sleep anyway. Naturally, I called into work the next morning and vowed never to take a daily pill for anxiety ever again. Every panic attack from that day forward was at least twice as severe as any that had preceded it. At the time, I was in the best position I had ever been in my life. I believed I was as content as I could ever hope for. I had a steady job, making $7.85 per hour, 30 hours per week. A long-term girlfriend of 3 years, who informed me she would like children in the future, despite the fact that I had undergone a vasectomy, and lived directly next door to my best friend and his wife, although she secretly hated me to a degree I wouldn't fully understand for several months. I wasn't being honest with myself. The anxiety attacks would seemingly come from nowhere, but with the benefit of hindsight, it's now clear that they were not without cause. Although I liked my coworkers, loved my girlfriend, and adored my time playing video games with my best friend, this was not the life I had needed. I was perpetually broke, unhealthy, and addicted to a routine of weed, cigarettes, video games, and crippling debt. It wasn't fulfilling at all. One day, I got hit with a particularly rough attack while at work, and, luckily for me, there was a walk-in clinic in the same mall as my store. The walk-in doctor, being able to see the severity of it firsthand, offered me lorazepam. Having researched various drugs for the last year, I was relieved to finally have a benzo offered to me without having to ask for it, lest I exhibit drug-seeking behavior. The lorazepam was a perfect fit. Half a pill only when I needed it. No more daily medications. In fact, simply having the pills on hand was often enough. Knowing I had that crutch leaning against the wall was usually all I needed to wait out an attack, to move forward. I used this strategy to pace out 20 pills for 8 months. Then the next 20 for 2 years. Today, I haven't taken a pill for an attack in nearly a decade. Not because I've been toughing them out, but because I simply haven't had to. I haven't had a panic attack in 9 years. The pills did their job. They gave me enough footing to make the changes I desperately needed to make, but had been ignoring for the entirety of my adult life. I started meditating, visualized a better life, took the terrifying step of moving across the country, alone, and accepted higher-paying manual labor jobs, something I had constantly avoided for some reason. I answered calls from debt collectors and started making payment arrangements. When an opportunity presented itself that I wasn't sure I could handle, I said yes anyway and just did my best. Within 6 months, poverty was in the rearview mirror. I owned a $28,000 truck, I was eating real, healthy food, I was in the best shape of my life. I was getting, at minimum, a $2 raise every 3 months. I had stopped chewing my nails down to disgusting nubs that I would shamefully ball into fists whenever I was in public. But most notably, I wasn't anxious anymore. Nervous at times, sure, but nothing that resembled the attacks of old. My life was the problem, even though I thought I loved it at the time. The rut is enticing. It's comfortable. But comfort is deceiving. It will keep you from what you want, from what you need. Change is a powerful drug, and it becomes more potent the more you take it. It becomes easier to swallow, too. You might be tempted to push back when you hear this, but stay with me. Mental illness doesn't need to be permanent. It doesn't need to be a part of who you are. I'm not saying medication isn't necessary, and I certainly wouldn't claim that it doesn't help, but I think it ought to be a means to an end. And when you find medication that works, that's when the real work begins. Of course, there are those that may need to be on medication their entire lives, but please consider the very real possibility that you're not one of them. I can't say definitively that a series of significant life changes will cure your mental illness, but it might. And isn't just the possibility enough to make it worth trying? Worst case scenario, you're back to where you are right now with a tiny adventure under your belt. The best case scenario is a future you couldn't even imagine right now. Try it. Really try it.